Hi. What you're looking at is the complete complement of circuit boards for NuTone IM3003. These boards came out of a set that a customer sent to me. Her name is Ellen. She lives in Arkansas. This is actually a set that we rebuilt in January of 2021. It was what I would refer to as an unremarkable repair. The boards got rebuilt and put it all back together and cleaned the controls and tested it, and everything worked well, and off it went. And you can tell that it's one of our sets that we worked on, mostly because if you look carefully, you can see all the little blue capacitors, which are capacitors that we use on the sets that we rebuild for the most part. Her description of the problem was it worked fine in the morning, and when she came home that evening, it had partially lit up display, but nothing worked at all. What are you looking at here? Well, in the order of importance, this is the power supply, amplifier, and intercom control board. It would be the main board of a 3003. This is the AM/FM tuner board. This is the audio input and intercom room control switchboard with chime input here. This is the clock and display board with its LED readout. And over here is an IA29 chime module. I hooked it up today to work on it, and when I hooked it up to the bench power supply and turned it on, it was drawing a little more than an amp of power. And a normally operating 3003 in relatively good condition is going to draw somewhere a little bit under a quarter of an amp. So obviously it had a problem. I did quick diagnostic on it, which was I unplugged all the boards from each other and powered up just the main board on its own, and the condition was the same. So obviously the problem was with the main board. Since the display wasn't lit up correctly, I decided to check something that I know would be related to that. I went ahead and took the main board out of the set, and I was going to replace one of the components in the power supply that has to do with delivering power to the display. Yes, indeed, that component was bad after I removed it, but upon closer inspection, I found some things that were fairly shocking that I thought I would share today. So the title of this video is going to be The Power of Nature and Ellen's IM3003, because we've got some major serious things going on here. So let's go ahead and move these all out of the way. Except for the main board. We're going to get back to those in a second. So this is the main board here, and this down here, and I'm going to do my best to try to show as much of this as I possibly can. Some of it's rather small, so it's a little hard to do. But right here, this is a pass transistor. It regulates the power for the display, and usually when you have a funky display, the way it's lit up, and it dims as you turn on the radio and things like this, this transistor is often bad. But what I found, and yes, it was bad, and this is a replacement, but I found lots more wrong with it. So let me reset this up and show you what I found. All right, now this is going to be tricky because everything is very small and it's hard to zoom in enough. And I turned off the overhead lights to get rid of some of the glare. So we're looking at the end of the board where I showed you the pass transistor, and these three little solder points right here are actually the underside of that transistor. What I found when I turned it over was, let me see if I can hold this still. There's a circuit trace. So the way this board is designed, and we're going to use this area as an example. So here we have this sort of, this solder point, and it goes up to here, and you have this large blobby area in the middle. That's all copper trace. And then you have these darker little copper outlines around it that define the shape, and those are breaks in it. Those are breaks in the circuit. So this is part of the circuit and this is not. What we have here is on this side, right here, you can see maybe the shininess of the copper that's underneath the green solder mask. And right here, the copper is burnt away. And if we follow it down, and I'm going to slide this up a little bit, if we follow it down and down and down and down, here's two more traces that maybe you can see the copper underneath the green solder mask, and it's burnt away here, and this one I think is burnt away also. And if we slide it down further and further and further, I think this is the right spot. Right here is another trace, and here's another trace where you can see the shiny copper, and again the copper traces are burnt away, the solder mask is gone. The solder mask is the green stuff over the top of the shiny copper that insulates it and keeps it from oxidizing and corroding. And if we go over here to the edge right here, you can see another shiny copper trace right here where the solder mask is burnt away, and there are actually other ones on here that are a little hard to show, especially with the overhead lights off because I have a hard time seeing it. If we go way up here, you notice here here are 4 solder points, and here are 4 other solder points. These are little ceramic capacitors on the other side of the board. And this one right here that's kind of dark, that one is also a trace that's burnt away. This board has had a major lightning strike because copper traces don't vaporize and burn like that unless it's exposed to high voltage, and that would be lightning. So let's move on to our next board. All right, this is the back side of the AM/FM tuner board. And if we look really carefully, try to keep my big hands out of the way, right here is a copper trace, and you might be able to see the shiny copperness here, the shiny copper here, and the green solder mask is burnt away. And if you get right down here where the screwdriver is pointing, you may be able to see that it's kind of black, and the black is from where the copper has actually vaporized on the board from the lightning, and this trace is now shot. There's also another one over here. There's this squiggly one that goes from here and it squiggles around and around and around and goes down to here. This portion from this point to this point, the trace and the solder mask is gone completely. And here you can see the end of the shiny copper, and here you can see a little more shiny copper, and that trace is blown away also. And there's also one right down here that's blown away. Again, the fatality of a lightning strike. Let's move on to our next board. All right, now we're on our room control audio input switchboard, the one with the 10 switches behind the doors. It's where the chime module plugs in. The LEDs on the front show AM, FM, phono, tape, all of that goodness. So if we flip this one over and we look really carefully, see if we can get this lined up for you. This is not easy to do when I'm looking at it on the screen on the camera and trying to make it so you can actually see the carnage. All right, that's pretty good. This is the audio intercom transformer, and right here you can see the shiny copper, and you can see this squiggly line that goes down to here, and the copper is burnt away here, and you can see the remnants of it here, and the solder mask is burnt away. Right here under the transformer, which is a little hard to see, there's another squiggly one that goes this way, and the copper is burnt away. Down here, this is the connector where the chime module plugs in. There's a couple little burnt solder pads down there, and I'm not sure if there's anything else on this one in particular. Oh yeah, we have burnt traces here. And what's interesting about this one is this is the back side of this cable, and this cable is the cable that plugs into the tuner. So it's like a chain of lightning. I'm not sure where the lightning came in. It might have come in the antenna connection, because those are some of the traces that are burnt. Let's jump back to the tuner a second. So here's the tuner board again, and right here are the pins right here and right here that the antenna plug onto. And if we flip that over, we looked at this just a second ago. This side is the area where the traces are burnt away, the squiggly one on the edge. That comes off the tuner. So odds are there was a lightning strike on her house or in the atmosphere around her house, and it came down the antenna and into the tuner and then fed through the rest of the set. There may be more wrong with this one. At this point, when I was inspecting these, it starts to get rather discouraging and sort of becomes like, what's the point? Next, we have our display board, and oddly enough, the display board, if you look at it very carefully, because I did, there are no burn traces on it that I can see. However, it does not work correctly. And I did try now it may not work correctly because the other boards are so severely damaged. However, when I power this up on its own separately from everything else, what we're looking at here is the front of it. There are 4 numbers on here for the clock and the radio station readout. There's 2 dots for colons. There's 1 dot for the FM for the frequency, and these are all 7-segment LED displays. So it was this weird jumble of a random group of segments that were lit up, not in any meaningful way or showing any real kind of number. And when this was powered up on its own, it was the same. So, and I don't think it was that the LEDs have failed. Most likely what has happened is this is the LED, this is the driver and decoder chip for this, because it's the driver that drives the LED segments, but it is also the decoder, and it's for the clock and the radio station frequency readout. So I'm pretty sure this chip is probably blown up, not an inexpensive part. Now, lastly, we're going to go to our Chime module. So here's our Chime module. Again, it's close up, so it's a little hard to see. This is an IA29 because it has the switch to change the tunes. What we have on here, if we look on the back side first, is we have here, we have the underside. This is a transistor here. Let's see if you can see that right there. You have burnt pads. On this edge of the board, you have a burnt trace that goes from here around to here. And so it starts here, it goes all the way up, it turns the corner, makes a right-hand turn, like that, goes all the way down here to this dark spot where it's burnt away. Another burnt trace there. Burnt traces all along here. This is all burned away. And maybe along this top edge also. It's dark, it's hard to tell with the overhead lights off, but it is definitely burnt. There is a burnt spot down here also. And on this side, we have here, we have a burnt resistor. And the piece de resistance, oh no, wait, there's more, I missed it. Wait, look, here is an actual exploded transistor. And this is the remnants. This is the briquette that used to be a tantalum capacitor. This one also was a tantalum capacitor. That's blown up. This is one leg. Let's see if I can show you this. This is one leg of the transistor. Here's the body of the transistor, which has exploded. You can actually see the die inside of it. And right here, I didn't notice this until just right now, right here, this is a little op amp. This is an output operational amplifier that boosts up the signal that the Chime module generates before it's fed into the master station. The body of this is actually blown away, and you can see the innards of the IC. And also down here, on this end, we have another transistor right here that the body of the transistor has exploded, and there's one of the legs right here. Pretty awful, isn't it? This is the power of nature. This is the power of a lightning strike. This is what lightning strikes do to intercoms sometimes, and this one is pretty severe. Usually damage is contained to one board more or less, and things blow up, and then the circuit is broken and the lightning doesn't go any further and you get off kind of easy. Not the case in this one at all. So that's the carnage on Ellen's IM3003 board set. So this creates a problem. There's a quandary here. Could all of that be repaired? Maybe. Would it be very time consuming? Yes. Is there any guarantee that after you fix and repair all the blown up components and all the burn up traces and all of those sort of things, that when you put it all back together, it's going to work? Unknown. Is it worth trying? Probably not. Too much damage, too much physical damage. Very likely you've got all kinds of component damage. Also, if the lightning strike was large enough to blow the top off an op amp and explode transistors and vaporize traces on circuit boards, for the most part, this board set is now toast. And one of the problems with this is, especially with solid state components. So solid state components are transistors, diodes, integrated circuits, the little Class D amplifier IC here. There's a transistor. the microprocessor that runs the Chime module, the LCD driver IC here, the FM, AM, FM, IF decoder chip here. There's all of these coils on the tuner. Even if they work when you're done, if they've all been severely stressed from the lightning, you don't really have any idea how long they're actually going to last. You could put in all the work and fix all the physical damage and replace as many parts as you can find that are bad, and you put it all back together and it works fine, and you send it back to Ellen, and then 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months later, something gives out and you're right back to where you started. And that's not a good choice. So now I have the task of coming up with, which fortunately we have, what she basically needs is a complete set of boards. Fortunately, we have a lot of things on hand so we can actually accomplish that, but I have to talk to her first and explain all of this to get her approval on what she wants to do, because this is way, way, way beyond what I expected to find, and I'm sure she doesn't have any idea. This is the power of nature. This is what lightning can do to electronics in your home. Is there anything you can do to prevent it? No, not really. You can put in powered surge equipment. You can put in lightning arrestor circuits. Does it help? I don't really know. Maybe it makes it somewhat better. Maybe it doesn't. But there isn't much you actually really can do. I always tell people on the phone that lightning's going to do what lightning's going to do. It's a force of nature. It's hundreds of thousands of volts sometimes. And if you're unlucky, this is what can happen. So I thought I would show this because it's a really, really clear and granted extreme example of what happens sometimes. I hope you found this interesting, and maybe for someone it'll be helpful somehow or another. If it is, give it a thumbs up on YouTube, because that helps us just a little bit. There'll be a banner right here that shows you how to subscribe. Go to our YouTube homepage, click on the bell, and when you click on the bell, click on it to receive all notifications, and every time we post a new video, you'll get a notification and you can watch it. That's all for today. See you on the next video.